So quick show of hands, who's feeling like as you sit here, in terms of your well-being and resilience and energy, if you're at an 8 and above out of 10, meaning we could go out and run maybe a half marathon now, and you're here simply because you're interested to see if you really do know everything and you're doing it all right. So 8 out of 10 and above, 8 or more, no? Somewhere between a 5 and a 7, and a 4 down below. Okay, great. So what you just reported back to me, we'll take a look at when we go through the framework just before we wrap up. So we're going to do a bit of a contiki tour around performance and how we should, or what kind of things we can look at in terms of having in place to manage our energy. A lot of what I'm going to share with you, you know, because it's not rocket science. But the issue is that a lot of us, because we're so busy, so we're time poor and stress rich, we end up not putting these things into practice. So we're going to look at how we can actually take the stuff that we know and make it actually work and stick within the context of our busy lives. And why I do what I do is because I'm not sure if you'll agree with the quote on the screen, that really, ultimately, we can use health and energy and performance to leverage everything else that we do in our lives, which may be partly also accumulating wealth. And a lot of people that I work with are generally doing the opposite. So they're compromising or giving up their health to build wealth. And then you get to a point where potentially you can use up all your wealth to buy back good health. So I'm a dietitian by qualification. I was in clinical practice for 5 years. And people don't go to a dietitian for fun. They generally go because they've been told to by their GP, or they want to lose weight, or they want to manage a condition like diabetes, or gout, or some kind of nutrition-related inflammatory condition. And I just realized I didn't want to wait for people to be sick to see them. I'd have a lot more fun being in the preventative well-being space, which is why I now do this kind of work full-time. So working mostly with businesses and leadership teams in terms of helping not only them, but their organizations look at what we can do differently. Because not everybody, unfortunately, has an office like the MissingLink space. This is what we need, a lot more fun, access to great food, and good coffee. Thanks, guys, for that. So you may have come across Simon Sinek in the Golden Circle, which tells us a bit about what's important in terms of behavior change. I'm going to share with you the how. So the framework that we're going to go through today around how we can manage our performance and be able to own that title that Don mentioned, CEO, Chief Energy Officer. Because what that means then is that you can mobilize energy on demand, and that really is a fantastic asset to have, especially when we're so stressed and we often then don't have time to look after ourselves. And I'm going to share with you what you can do, so a whole bunch of tips around what you can do. The key, though, is you might have, I don't know, 3 things, 6 things, 10 things that we talk about over the next 50 minutes or so that you feel, actually, I could be doing that better. You're not going to leave here, though, with a list of 3 or 6 or 10. I'm going to ask you to reflect and pledge one thing that you're going to take with you. Because the one thing I know as a health practitioner is that even though we know what we should be doing, people are not happy, not wealthy, not healthy. And the principles for managing health, wealth, and happiness are generally quite basic and similar. And the key to behavior change is rather doing small things at a time and then creating positive momentum around that. And that's some of the behavioral science stuff that I'll share with you as we wrap up. The key, though, what drives behavior change is having a sense of why you're going to do that particular pledge. Because once you have a strong enough reason why, you'll always find a how. So why I do this work is illustrated in this next short video, which will show you a 32-year-old not really having a great day. So he's being wheeled into hospital, and then the video goes quite quickly back in time. You'll perhaps notice the candles on his birthday cake. And what the video does is it shows 2 things. It highlights the complexity of this topic. So we all arrive today with a set of biology which is based on behaviors. So you show up with a certain level of energy and health because of how you behave, which is then driven by emotions, belief systems, culture, and upbringing. And if we want to change the way we move forward, we need to consider the stories that we carry. So part of my story is being French. My family are from Champagne. My parents left the Champagne region in 1969 to come on honeymoon to Australia. They took a boat. They docked at Durban. My dad got offered a job a week later, and they're still living in Germiston 50 years later. But why that's part of my story is that I was French, am French, before I was a dietitian. So for me, the idea of having, we had champagne yesterday. I think we had champagne the day before as well. So for me, good food and a good creme brulee is okay, even though sugar is maybe in too much is not that good for us. So balance for me is key. So you're sitting here on this chair or standing on a balance board with a history behind you, and you've got to take that into account if you're going to move forward and make behaviors that can stick and change. And then the video also highlights that at any age, not just 32, and I'll share the story of somebody close to me who's now 70, who made 2 small changes to her diet and had a dramatic positive input in terms of how her health was feeling. So at any point, we can have a positive change on our health without doing major changes. We don't have to become vegan and give up all the things that are perhaps part of your upbringing. So let's take a look.
All right, what do we got?
Schematic, heart attack. 5'9", 300 pounds, 32 years old.
How the hell is that?
Could be developing diabetes. X-ray change.
You're graduating. Watch TV, you will not fever.
You can't do this.
Yes, can.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to do this.
You have to make a change.
Good job, Jim. I'll get an A+.
Are you fries, sweetie? I still can't believe you did this job for fries. I know. But it's the only thing that will make you stop.
Yeah, so this is as low as we go. It's up from here. But it's why I do what I do. Because no 32-year-old, and now we're seeing kids at the age of 12 developing adult onset diabetes. So diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, Alzheimer's, and certain cancers are the 5 reasons why we have such high morbidity and mortality. So there's this tsunami, this like huge wave that's hitting the health, not just in South Africa, but now that I'm based in the UK and work between the two, it's exactly the same there. And my personal passion in the UK is to try and reduce the burden on the NHS, because the system's not going to last. It's a great system, and having spent so much time in South Africa, I think it's amazing, but there's a sense of entitlement and this expectation that it's always going to be there, and it's not, because of those 5 conditions. And those 5 conditions can all be managed, sometimes even reversed, through looking at the things we're about to take a look at. So let's see how you guys are doing. We're going to go through a framework that I put together when I first started doing workshops, because I wanted a tool that people could use to practically measure where they're at. So the tool is the Wellculator, and we're going to look at a couple of points of the fundamentals that we should have in place if we want to manage our health and performance better. And what the Wellculator does is it takes a look at how we should be eating and fueling and hydrating and moving. But before all of those things, there's something that we ultimately need as humans more than anything else, more than sleep, more than food. Can anybody guess what that is? Yeah. So oxygen. So we all breathe. The thing about breath, it's so amazing. It's the first thing you do when you're born, right? So we take a breath. It's the last thing you do before you leave this world. A breath. The breath is an incredible tool that I don't think that many of us are not conscious of or aware of how powerful it can be. So that's the thing with breath, is that it happens automatically. That's controlled by the sympathetic nervous system. But what I'm about to ask you to do is going to create a bit of magic. When you start focusing on your breath, because it's the one thing that we can do voluntarily as well as it just happening on its own, is you tap into another nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system. Anybody heard about that? It's a great one to activate when you're feeling stressed, because it helps you reduce the fight or flight response. So when you just start becoming aware of your breath, perhaps making it a bit deeper, and if you lengthen your exhale, we know that you can reduce the effects of cortisol and adrenaline. And when we're stressed, generally we all respond in pretty much the same way. We start getting, well, we have a faster heartbeat, our muscles can start constricting, we start getting less of that helicopter view type thinking because the prefrontal cortex doesn't work as well, the limbic part of the brain. And I really enjoy reading up about neuroscience, but I'm by no means as smart as those guys, so I simplify things. And when we're stressed, when something triggers us, it could be somebody cutting you off in traffic, it could be a client that's really difficult, it could be a personal issue. You can have a lizard hijack wizard moment. So the lizard comes out of her box or his box, and then you just don't show up at your best. And one way that you can quickly, I'm all in for quick wins, reduce that effect is tap into your breath. This guy is somebody I'd like to package and carry around with me because he really got me thinking about breath.
We can meditate everywhere, anytime, even 2 seconds, 2 seconds, while you're walking, while you're having coffee and tea, while you're having a meeting, so you can meditate. Many people has a little bit misunderstanding about meditation. They think meditation meaning think of nothing, concentrate. So push too much. So we cannot block thought and emotion. In fact, we need thought and emotion. So whether you listen to your monkey mind or not, that's the issue. What I call monkey mind, mine is chatting, pala 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 yada yada. Monkey mind is giving your opinion. So whether you listen to opinion or not, it's up to you, right? So through meditation, what we do is we have to make friends with the monkey mind. But how to make friends? Just giving banana doesn't work, So right method is you need to give job to monkey mind. How to give job monkey mind? So the simple meditation technique is be aware of the breath. So you ask monkey mind, hello, what's breath? So monkey mind says, yeah, good idea. And be aware of breath. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in. There's a lot of thought comes at the background. Don't care, no problem. So as long as you not forget your breath, anything is okay. Not need too much concentration. Just simply be aware of your breath. Even 2 breath, 1 breath. So therefore, we can meditate everywhere, anytime.
Does anybody have some kind of mindfulness practice or meditation practice that they do? I mean, Don shared a really funky one with me that you do with your wife when you go traveling. Not that one. When they travel, they go find a spot in nature and then take a video for 5 minutes while being mindful and then use the video as a reminder to anchor back to that serenity. It's magnificent. Does anybody else do perhaps a daily? What do you do?
I try and meditate for 20 minutes. If
20?
possible.
Okay.
If I can. Not very often. I'm very scatterbrained. Just to try and get the mind,
Do you do it on your own? Do you use an
I
app?
do it on my own.
Okay.
I found an app recently that I've started using that I quite enjoy. So,
Can you share what it is?
well, it's a Christian meditation app.
Okay.
So I find a scripture and I meditate on
Lovely.
it, and it's been very calming.
Yeah.
It's been amazing, actually.
Yeah. I mean, the kind of research now that we have to substantiate that regular meditation, and you don't need to be doing 20 minutes. You can, Sean Acor, who wrote Your Happiness Advantage and does some funky work around the space, has said that just 10 minutes after 6 weeks, if you do 10 minutes on most days of the week, by controlling your thoughts, and you can, I find I used guided meditations. I use Headspace and Insight Timer, and it took me about 3 years to get to a point where I could relax and control my monkey mind on my own. But you can actually change the structure of the brain. So after just 6 weeks of 10 minutes of meditation or mindfulness, you can increase the memory centers, so the hippocampus enlarges, and it helps to reduce the fight or flight response that a lot of us have because of stress. So breathing is key if you want to manage your performance. And what I find as a, yeah? Do you have a question?
Sorry, I'm just interested to know, what do you think of the Wim Hof method? The Wim Hof method. Because he works a lot with breath and he works on over-oxygenizing your body.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Steve knows a lot about that. We're going to potentially try it in London. So I've recently come across it. I haven't tried it myself. So
I've done a couple sessions just...
and is there somebody in Joburg that does that?
Sorry?
Oh, so you use YouTube to do that. Actually, on that note, so the Wim Hof method, I will put together a summary of all the resources and video links, and I'll share that with the slides to the team, and then they'll get it to you. And then you can contact me if you have any questions. I'm available on WhatsApp, through Instagram, through email. Okay. So taking a deep breath before you fuel during the day, as a dietitian, has shown me that people can make better mindful choices around food. So let me ask you this question. Have you got a strategy around the way that you feed yourself? in a way that sustains your energy. So most days, do you find that your energy at 5 p.m. is the same as it is as maybe 8 a.m.? Before you answer the question, do you resonate with this? Because this is what I come across a lot. So a lot of us are getting up in the morning. We may or may not have breakfast. We then grab a few cups of coffee, especially if we're in back-to-back meetings. If we skip lunch, we probably look for some kind of snack in the afternoon. And then by the time we get home, we have a glass of wine or two, and then we're so famished that we end up eating more than we need, and we potentially then have, I don't know, chocolate afterwards. Can anybody resonate with aspects of what I've just shown? What parts in particular? Skipping breakfast? Oh, is that you? Complete. Okay. Okay. More coffee.
Already at 6 this morning.
Okay, 6.
Yeah, when I
Okay.
wake up in the morning, I have to
Okay. There's some things you could do as you get up that might help you. Because the reason, well, we'll talk about caffeine, so I'll put a pause on that. Anybody else resonate with big meal late at night? Yeah? Anybody not resonate with this at all? Because I'd love to know if it's working for you, what strategy you have. Because what we know is that there's some basic guidelines that seem to work for most of us. But the more I do this work, the more I realize we don't actually know everything. And each of us are individual. And so the more information that you can get about your own personal blueprint and then adjust the way that you eat, the way that you live, the better results you'll get. So I, for instance, have done some genetic tests. Has anybody done, perhaps with Daniel Mayersfield? He's based here in Ilovo, and he offers a great service where they look at your genetic blueprint and they can give you some advice around how to eat, how to supplement, and how to move. So I knew this before the test, but the test validated that I'm never going to be an endurance athlete. I just don't have those kind of muscle fibers. So short, intense exercise is better. But I picked up a bunch of other useful stuff that I really need a particular type of B vitamin, and I probably need magnesium. And my liver is not that good at detoxifying caffeine and alcohol. So there's some vegetables I can use to help my liver work better. So, and it's really, it's nutrigenomics. So the link between nutrition and genetics is a fascinating science. And if you really want to then fine-tune your approach, I'd recommend that that's a route to go. And I'll include that in the list of resources. So in terms of this pattern, so if you resonate with perhaps skipping breakfast, maybe the whole lot, having a late big meal late in the day, the impact on our energy is that it impacts our blood glucose, which is our source of energy. And in this case, your energy source would roller coaster. So there'd be a lot of dips and spikes and variation. And ideally, if you want to be your own CEO, you want to stay in what I call the performance zone and try and keep your source of energy, your blood glucose, as constant as possible. Has anybody had a dip in blood sugar this week, perhaps? So low blood sugar. And how does it make you feel? So I find when my blood sugar drops, I don't physically get tired, but what does happen to me is this 2-kilogram universe that sits on my shoulders definitely gets affected. Like I lose my sense of humor, can get hangry. Anybody else get that? Just like hungry, irritable, yeah. So a lot of the neuroscience out there seems to back up that when your blood glucose drops, it's hard for your brain to regulate itself. And you can also have that lizard hijack wizard moment getting triggered. And you will become obsessed about finding rocket fuel, which means you might want to go for fast-releasing foods. So something like the flapjacks or another coffee or a sweetened beverage as opposed to a healthy option. What happens when your blood sugar goes too high? Yeah, so you can buzz, and over time, what happens is you predispose yourself to those 5 conditions that I mentioned. So high blood sugar, and especially if you combine that with cortisol, which most of us have very high levels of because of the constant stress that we're under and anxiety, it's just a recipe for disaster. It suppresses your immune system, so it's easy for you to get sick, and it's kind of hard to shake off bugs. It also makes it easier for you to gain weight, and the issue with that weight gain is that it often happens around the belly. And weight that sits around your organs puts you at a higher risk of developing those conditions. So ideally, we don't want to be out of the range above or below. We want to try and keep it as constant as possible. And that really is the most fundamental step towards managing our physical well-being. And physically, when we're managing balance or homeostasis in the body, your hormones work a bit better, your brain neurochemistry works a bit better, and that then helps you show up at your best, emotionally and mentally, and then self-actualize and do all the cool stuff that you want to do. So having a strategy that works for me, that I've done with practice, is to graze rather than gorge. So I carry snacks around with me, so I'm more of a snacker. And ideally, if you're going to snack, you want to snack on some protein and fiber. what would that mean? In fact, has anybody got food on them now? So if we go back to the family that are here, you guys have probably got access to food, but the friends of the family, if we go back to your office, have you got any food in your desk drawer or in your car? And what kind of things do you have? Yeah?
I have an apple, biltong, and druppels.
So that's perfect, because that's like some protein and some fiber. That's great. Anybody have something different besides fresh fruit, biltong? Chocolate? So would chocolate give us protein and fiber? No. Okay. Okay. Any, nuts is cool. Yeah. The key with snacking is to make a smart choice, because a lot of snacks out there, even if they're labeled as healthy, on the front, they often aren't at the back. Is anybody reading labels? Do you know what to look out for? Like what is, in 10 seconds, can you pick up a label and make a decision as to whether it's okay to have? Fat. Don't worry about the fat. Who said the sugar? Yeah, take a look at the list of ingredients. And generally, if there's a whole long list of ingredients that you can't pronounce, don't pick that up too often. Yeah, and I mean, there was these strawberry yogurt-coated flakes that I saw the other day that had 17 ingredients in them. 4 of them were sugar. So there were 4 different types of sugar. Like that. But at the front, a big fat strawberry dipped in yogurt, reference to real fruit, no preservatives. So like, anybody who didn't read the back would think that was a great choice. Yeah. So snacking works for me. If I go back to my family in France, the French don't snack. How do the French eat? Oh, well, so breakfast would be a coffee with maybe a pastry. But what do the French do that we don't do? So if we go to Paris, no, I mean, Richard was there, a week ago. If you go to Paris over lunchtime, you can be anywhere. No use your said where there's like Total. I mean, I've done work with MAC Cosmetics and Estee Lauder and PayPal. And when we have meetings at lunchtime, everyone exits the building. They go into the restaurants and the bistros, and they sit there for 90 minutes. And they have a 3-course meal. When was the last time you sat and had a lunch in Joburg for 90 minutes? We just don't. So when we make changes to the way that we eat, it's also got to fit our lifestyle. So not just internally who we are and our genetics. And I find that the snacking works for me. For some people, intermittent fasting works. Is anybody doing that? Yeah? So I do that on occasion, because with all the travel I do, I sometimes find that it's hard to manage my weight and my energy. And intermittent fasting seems to work well for me. I don't do, though, the bulletproof coffee that comes often with that. And my genetics has said I should not have saturated fats. So having coffee made with butter and coconut is probably not a good idea for me. So my message for you is to practice and find a strategy that fits with your lifestyle, but also suits you. Don't just do something because your colleague or your mate lost 10 kilograms on that plan, or their book was a bestseller. You know, like the meal revolution is a great example of a bestseller in South Africa. Tim Noakes knows, well, he's helped change many, many lives. But for me, that approach would probably kill me faster, because I now know what my genetics is. So get the right information, speak to a health practitioner, and make sure it fits in with your lifestyle. Yeah? Eat Right for Your Blood Type, which was launched by Dr. Peter Dalmore. I don't know. Can I tell you why I don't think it works? For my blood type, I should eat guinea fowl and rabbit as my primary protein source, which you laugh at, but what do the French eat? When I go back to my family, it's like rabbits and guinea fowl is often what we have. But I don't live in Champagne. I live in Bedford View. There's no rabbits in the Pick and Pay at Bedford Centre. So I can't do that. And I find that people lose weight on their program because they don't eat out, because the lists are so specific around what you can and can't have. So does it do more harm than good? Probably not. But I think you lose weight because you're calorie restricting as opposed to what you're actually eating. Does that answer your question? Yeah, cool. So the key is to be prepared if you are going to have a strategy. So for me, I keep food wherever I go. I mean, right now, if anybody's hungry, I've got 2 bananas, 2 easy peel nachos from Woolworths, and 2 sticks of Dreurwurst, venison-based. So I just keep it around. So once a month, stock up your environment. This is not something you need to do every night, because then it's just not going to work. So that when you need to make a better choice, it's there, because we generally don't live in a society that encourages or makes it easy for us to grab healthy choices. Take a look at this chap. He's having a protein-based, portion-controlled snack in the afternoon. Look at the outcome, because that can be you in terms of managing your physical energy if you fuel correctly.
Such a feeling's coming over me. There is wonder in most everything I see. Not a cloud in the sky, got the sun Won't be surprised if it's a dream. I'm on top of the world.
This is the end, beautiful friend. This is the end, my only friend. The end of our elaborate plans. The end.
You get the idea, right? So you can bounce back if you have the right fuel. But there's another thing that can help you bounce back, and that is to not sit for a long time. What happens when we sit for too long? We often compromise on our posture. I know that I always cross my legs and I twist, so I get tight hips. We may start compromising on our backs being upright, and so our breathing doesn't work as well. You can create some tension around your neck and your head. And so it's a good idea to move often. So having this kind of office space is just awesome in terms of encouraging movement. But I'm guessing, well, let me not guess. Show of hands if you spend a lot of time behind a desk or behind a steering wheel. Okay. Well, I'd like to invite you, if you'd like to, for a minute or so, to stand and stretch. Anybody feel anything different besides a smile on your face? Because movement often shifts our emotional state, so motion shifts emotion. I can feel my heart rate beating a bit. Can you? Okay, which is a really good thing, because now you've sped up your metabolism a bit. You've reactivated an enzyme called lipoprotein lipase, which is an enzyme that stops working after 25 minutes of sitting, apparently. And then when it doesn't work as efficiently, you can build up your cholesterol. So moving often energizes us, releases muscle tension, helps to get our metabolism going. And there's been some research to substantiate that. This is a graph that shows a whole group of people that were asked to move versus a group that don't. And the movement was 3 to 5 minutes of walking around the office. So it wasn't even squats or burpees or anything like that. Their energy level here was 1 hour later. The group that moved often had reported their energy levels as double what the other group was. So how can you incorporate more movement in your day? Is anybody doing movement in their day? Perhaps you have stand-up desk, stand-up meetings. Okay, so if we had time, when I run half-day workshops, we often spend time brainstorming how can we, in your personal environment, be it if you're an entrepreneur and you work from home, if you're in a business or an office, or if you're a manager, how you can actually shift the culture around encouraging movement. And if you want to take it to the next level, besides just standing and stretching and never sitting for longer than an hour, ideally, the key would be to try and move every half hour. I personally don't find that practical, but I definitely try and not sit for an hour or more. But you can actually use certain movements to change the way that you feel. So Amy Cuddy is somebody that a lot of us might know about. She did some work around power posture and how when you stand or sit in a certain position, you can feel more assertive because your chemistry changes in your body. So we won't have time to go into today, but I wanted to just highlight that if you want to use movement more effectively, I can point you to some amazing resources. I'm busy doing a course at the moment called Embodiment Facilitation Coaching, which is around how to use the science of movement, posture and movement to change how you feel. So very basically, I'm somebody who has a very strong earth element. I'm always quite grounded. I like structure, and I find it easy to be grounded. I don't find it easy to work in this kind of environment and be playful and flighty, but I often need to think of ideas and be creative. And so I've got movements, simple postures that I use to create that state of being. And the state change happens quickly, like we're talking 30 seconds or a minute. You can bring on that state. So if you're interested and you'd like to know more, those 2 books are a great place to start. Wendy Palmer, Leadership Embodiment, and then Move to Greatness, but I'd be very happy to point you in the right direction and perhaps share some of the movements that I'm doing, which I try and do during the day to change my state. The best time, though, to think about movement, if you're not going to be doing a lot of movement in the day, is how you start your day. So a lot of guys, Tim Ferriss, for instance, anybody follow him or listen to his blog? If you want to, what do you think of him? Thumbs up?
I like his knowledge, but I think he likes himself more.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoy his Friday newsletter. There's some awesome resources, books and podcasts and all things around managing performance. And what all three of these books brought out is that top performers, so people who manage to sustain high performance in whatever domain they work in, the one thing that they seem to have in common is how they start their day. So the first half an hour to an hour of your day, for many of us, I don't know, does anybody wake up with their cell phone as an alarm? And then if your phone is not on flight mode, you might notice that you had 16 WhatsApps and then emails. And then before you actually think about connecting with your own body, you're connecting with the outside world and potentially triggering adrenaline, cortisol, and then not showing up at your best. So if you're able to, the first half an hour of your day, have some kind of resilience routine. And the best way to do that is to do it through mindfulness, so perhaps to breathe. I like to incorporate the mindful breathing with some kind of movement. So something that worked for me, I went to a conference and there was this aeronautical engineer, and I saw him outside on the grass in the morning and he was spinning around like this. So when I saw Mark at the conference, I said, Mark, what were you doing on the grass? And he said, oh, it's a sequence of 5 stretch exercises that I do every day. And if I don't do them, I'm just not in the zone. So he showed me the exercises, I looked them up, and I did them for 18 months. I've only recently changed them to incorporate these new postures that I've learned on this course that I'm doing. So I don't know, has anybody come across the 5 Tibetan rites? I'll send you a Google link to a great blog, and wherever you look on the internet generally, the 5 Tibetan rites are a series of 5 stretching type exercises that if you do the full 21 repetitions of each, will take you 7.5 minutes. So wherever I am, in a hotel room, at home, traveling, I will often just do these next to the bed on the floor. I'd go outside if I can, but in the UK you can't always go outside, and I don't like the idea of doing these in the pouring rain. But I find that by doing them, not only do I stretch out a lot of the muscles that get tight from sitting and driving and traveling and commuting, but I do them mindfully, so very conscious of inhaling and exhaling, so it has like a double win effect. And it takes me 7.5 minutes. Did you catch that? That's the key. So there's no driving to a gym and having to park and find the time to do a spinning class. It's these kind of things that if we do consistently can really play a big role in our health. In fact, one of my friends is a chiropractor, and when I showed him these exercises, he said that if most of his patients did these exercises, they probably wouldn't be patients because they would help the back a lot. Yeah.
So maybe that answers what I was going to ask then. I was wondering how much of this do you think comes down to more like an NLP response rather than than the movements themselves? Like, is it just the fact that you're moving in the morning and you've trained your mind into feeling that's a good thing, or is it actually the movements? But I guess the chiropractor answered that as well.
Yeah, I think it's both. And now what we're seeing is that actually we used to think that you can, well, the way you move the body can change your emotions, but it also goes the other way around. That you can, if I'm answering your question, you can stand in a way that makes you feel more powerful and assertive. So you can, but you're asking around neuro-linguistic programming. But yeah, I think it works both ways. Yeah. So I'm just going to, there we go. So we've looked at the most important points around managing our performance is how we feel. And there we go, how we feel. And in terms of how we perhaps feel and move in the morning, a really important thing to consider is not just when we eat and how much we eat, but what we're actually taking a look at eating. And the best thing to take a look at is having a lot of color on your plate. And when I say color, I don't mean wine gums and Smarties. And we were having a conversation around beige not being a color, really. So why is eating like an artist important? Because when you're eating a lot of color and you're eating a lot of fresh produce, you're potentially giving yourself a bigger spectrum of nutrients, which can help you then optimize your performance and well-being. I said that I would share a personal story. So the story is based on the connection between the brain and the gut. And we won't go into a lot of detail this morning, but we know that they are connected. So you might have heard or read up about it. The gut is referred to as the second brain. There's an intricate nervous system around the gut that is connected to our brain. A lot of the brain chemicals like serotonin and dopamine are manufactured in the gut. And the gut is healthy when the gut has a lot of good bacteria inside it. And this person I'm talking about is my mom. So my mom was diagnosed with a very serious skin condition in her early 20s called Darris disease. And it was triggered by stress. and move on 4 or 5 decades. Whenever it was triggered, she would be given neostigazine, which is quite a strong corticosteroid. It's actually banned in the UK and Europe because it's really bad for your kidneys. But she would take that, and she went through a patch about 3 years ago where it was really bad. She was particularly stressed. It was very hot. Her skin flared up, but to the point where it was creeping up her neck. It was on her eyelids. She was sitting under a fan with a wet towel to try and ease the discomfort. She was really not happy. And the dermatologist was not happy to give her more medication. So she went to an alternative practitioner, somebody called an integrative practitioner. So integrative doctors spend an hour with you and ask you a lot of questions around your lifestyle. And for the first time, in the consultation of her skin, somebody asked her about her diet and her toilet habits. My mom has had chronic constipation since about the age of 15 or 16. Chronic as in once or twice a week, with help from laxatives. And this doctor said, we need to manage that condition. And so for the next 3 months or so, my mom ate a lot more color, a lot more fiber, and she took a good probiotic, which is a tablet that gives you some good bacteria. So this is my mom when she was really bad. You can see it coming up her skin. I mean, she isolated herself. She was not going out and not feeling good. She couldn't open her eyes. She started getting bleeding. And this was her 4 months later. I mean, Steve met my parents for the first time 2 days ago, and she still looks like that. She's never taken neostigazine again, and she's no longer constipated. So she goes to the bathroom much more often. And there was a strong link there between her gut health. When she got her gut healthy, her skin health improved. So I don't know each of you individually, but what I do know as a health practitioner, and people share all kinds of stories with me, it seems to be a common thread that when you look after your gut, you can potentially reduce a lot of ailments. Not everything, but I would encourage you to speak to a nutritionist, go see a dietitian, get your diet more tuned in with particular focus on your gut, and potentially you could help headaches, sinus, a skin condition, even cholesterol, diabetes. I mean, there's a link now to autism and Alzheimer's. There's some amazing stuff coming on around color. And to know if you're eating enough color, ideally when you do have a plate of food in front of you, the dominant food group should be color. So ideally put a lot of the color on your plate first before you go for the other stuff. Why do I say put the color on your plate first? Because if you go for the chicken and rice or the spaghetti bolognese, and then look for the salad, what happens? There's not much space left. Yeah. So that's something I do whenever possible. I try and put the color on first. And if you would like some easy ideas, something I do, I'm by no means a chef, but every Friday I send out a foodie recipe that is 5 ingredients or less and as colorful as possible. So if you'd like to hear from me, you can then just respond to the thank you note, and I'll send that to you. I saw a client recently, Ian Wendell, who said, Celine's recipes are great. I said, oh, thank you so much, Ian. Which ones have you tried? And he said, no, none. But I think of you every Friday. So I don't mind if you just delete, but in that second, you'll be like, I can't really remember her name, but she was French, and we spoke about eating color and that kind of thing. So we've taken a look at strategic refueling, how to move in the morning, do you eat like an artist? Mindful eating is around just slowing down, and managing your breath can help with that. When we eat a bit slower, we can manage how much we eat, and that can help if you're wanting to lose weight. So rather than go on a diet, think about slowing down the pace, because it generally takes 15 or 20 minutes for your stomach to send messages up to your appetite sensor in your brain to say, hey, I've had enough. What about hydration? That's also another key in terms of managing our energy and performance. So, Chris? Peter, I got that completely wrong. Peter, I said I'd give you a formula. So, think of your weight. Think of your weight in kilograms and divide by 10, or for every 10 kilograms that you weigh, you need 1 glass of water. So if you're weighing 90 kilos or 95, you need around 9 glasses of water, a glass being 250 mils per day. You can, but then you'll be having like 3 or 4 times more than that. And most people, by the time you overdrink, you'll feel uncomfortable. Most of us are doing the opposite. Yeah, and you can more overdrink when you're doing sports than just day-to-day life. You need more. More, yeah. That'll be per kilogram. So if you come and chat to me, I can work. Yeah. But that's your baseline. So how are you doing, Peter?
Probably wet.
Okay. So when we dehydrate, so
10% of what I should.
okay. So when we don't have enough water, what happens? I get a headache. I generally find, yeah, so if I've just had 3 cups of coffee and nothing and it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I find I might get a headache. Some of us get tired, and some of us might feel like we're hungry, because when your mouth is dry, that can be a trigger to eat. You actually, to wake up in the morning and have half a liter of water, so 2 big glasses, is a really cool way before you drink coffee. So have the water to hydrate again.
But the water's in the coffee.
But the coffee is a diuretic, so you use that fluid to get rid of the coffee. So, sorry, tea as in normal tea, or
5 roses with milk.
so 2 cups of tea is equivalent to 1 cup of coffee. So the guideline for coffee is around 3 to 4 cups or units of caffeine a day would be about right. Anything more than that, and you then could stimulate your heart rate, stimulate more adrenaline, and get addicted to it, because it's hard not to have it. So. Not. So tea would be about 6 cups or so, yeah. I find what helps me with water is to have water bottles in sight, and just to make it more funky, because plain water is boring. Like perhaps install, I've got a filter on my tap at home, which I enjoy the taste of. I also add stuff to water. So not just lemon, but like citrus fruit, strawberries, lime. I cooked some fennel the other day, and I used the leaves, and I just soaked it with hot water, and then I had a big glass of that this morning. Because there's some kind of flavor that just makes it a little bit more sexy. Yeah. So, rethinking drinks, knowing your numbers. What kind of numbers do you think I'm talking about? Because it's not about your balance sheet. No, it's more around health numbers. They give you an idea of your risk for those conditions I spoke about. So all of us should have an idea of what our cholesterol, blood glucose, and blood pressure is. In South Africa, we have the highest rates of blood pressure on the planet, which is why we have so much heart disease and heart attacks. So those 3 things are important because they often highlight if things could be going wrong, and you can fine-tune them. I mean, there's more things you can do. But those 3 are baseline, quite important. And then you can do things like genetic testing if you really want to fine-tune your approach. And then in terms of nutrients, does anybody take any vitamins or supplements? So as a foodie, I would like to say that we can get everything we need from food. But for various reasons, we can't. Because of the way food's farmed, because we are quite stressed and we need more. So it's probably a good idea for most of us to be taking omega-3 if you're not eating omega-3 containing fish. Perhaps magnesium. A lot of South Africans are deficient in magnesium, and that's a very important cofactor in so many brain reactions. And maybe then a general multivitamin. The key, though, is to take a good brand. That you know that they've invested the technology and the science around making it bioavailable and absorbable. So if you want to know a couple of brands, you can contact me. I'll point you in the right direction. But don't go to Pick and Pay or Checkers and buy no-name brand. Yeah. So at least if you're spending your money, you know that you're doing it right. And ideally, you want to speak to somebody first. Show them what you're eating, and then get some advice around your symptoms, your health, so that you take what you really need. I know for a fact that omega-3 helps my mother manage her skin condition. And probiotics are something that I use a lot to keep my immune system strong because I travel a lot. And then getting enough rest is key. So when do we rest? We rest if we do mindfulness practice, but we rest when we sleep. So how much sleep should we get? Yeah, between 7 and 9. Who had 7 hours or more last night? I did. Actually, it was fantastic. Okay. So most of us need that sleep. And why is that important? I mean, there's a variety of reasons. There's a system called the glymphatic system. So it's a bit like the lymphatic system that cleans out all the toxins in your body. The glymphatic system only gets activated when you sleep. So if you want to clean out all the toxins and proteins and plaque thing that happens between your neurons in the day, that is key. And for memory, we need to sleep. And enough sleep also helps us lose weight and manage cravings for sugar, because of when you're sleep deprived, your body produces a hormone called ghrelin. What does ghrelin sound like? Yeah, and were the gremlins friendly? No, they were very hungry and irritable. And that's what we end up being if we don't get enough rest. So sleep is key. And if that's something that you're personally struggling with, feel free to contact me. And I know some funky people who specialize in that. Ariana Huffington, her book, The Sleep Revolution, is outstanding. It's been part of my personal journey. I got divorced 4 years ago, got addicted to sleeping pills. And so I had to relearn how to sleep. Because nobody told me that Stilnox was highly addictive. Yeah, and the divorce was over, he was remarried, we were all having dinner together, and I was still taking the pills to sleep. So yeah, for me, what helped was earplugs. So that's one thing I got from Ariana Huffington's book. But if you get enough rest, it can really help you to show up at your best. And then the last point on the Wellculator we've spoken about, it's the importance of moving your body. So during the day, and then also to find time to do about half an hour of exercise on a daily basis. And that, ideally, we should be doing stretch exercise like yoga and Pilates combined with cardiovascular type exercise, which could be dancing or running. CrossFit. The key is to just have fun and to try not do stuff that you injure yourself with. So the first thing we looked at was, do you have a strategy to refuel that helps you manage your energy? So are you eating in a way that helps you sustain your energy throughout the day? And go with your gut feel here. So try and tap into your body. And your body will tell you initially whether it's a yes or a no. Yes gives you 1 point. No gives you no point. 0. Number 2, do you have a balanced breakfast if you are eating breakfast and you're not fasting? And do you have some kind of morning routine that connects your mind and your body? So are you doing some kind of stretching or exercise or just taking 10 minutes to what we call embody, to wake up and connect with yourself before you connect with the outside world? And so you could be having the breakfast, but you have no idea about the mindfulness connection thing, in which case you give yourself a half. If you have a balanced breakfast, which is a bit of protein and fiber, ideally, and you do some kind of stretching or exercise or meditation, then you get 1 point. Got that? Great. Do you eat like an artist? So the measure for that is that most of your meals, color would dominate. Ideally, you should be having up to 10 fistfuls or a tennis ball size, 10 of those every day of lots of colorful foods. But the colorful foods are important because they give us fiber, vitamins and minerals, and they help feed the bacteria in your gut. And perhaps, do you have an idea of whether your gut health is good and if it's helping you support good health? So that's why there's half for eating like an artist and half for do you manage your gut health? And then number 4, do you manage your balance? Do you balance your portion sizes, and are you a mindful eater? So generally, do you eat quite consciously, or do you just eat on the go and wolf down, and is food just functional as opposed to inspirational? Do you drink enough water to stay hydrated? Enough is 1 glass for every 10 kilograms that you weigh. Are you careful about managing the other drinks that you have, so not too much coffee? None of us should be really having sugar-containing drinks, except if it's maybe on a weekend, once in a while. We didn't really chat about alcohol, but you'll have ideally you should have 2 or 3 days in the week where you don't drink any alcohol. And anything more than half a bottle per person is probably a bit much. And then, do you know whether you're getting all the nutrients that you need? And if you're taking supplements, are you making an informed choice? So have you spoken to somebody to give you good advice and done some analysis in terms of what you need? And then, do you get enough sleep? Enough sleep is somewhere between 7 and 9 hours. Waking up restfully will be a good idea to see if you get enough sleep. And do you have some kind of daily meditation or mindfulness practice? Even if that is taking a deep breath as you're making a cup of coffee 3 times a day, or maybe it is 10 or 20 minutes of sitting still. There's various ways to bring in mindfulness. That's like we could spend a whole day talking about just that. And then lastly, are you activating your body? Do you move during the day? And are you finding time to exercise? We need half an hour of exercise every day, and if you skip a day, it means an hour on average every second day. We really don't move our bodies enough in general. So the key, if you want to change behavior, because if it was easy, we would be doing it. So we know that changing behavior, especially around food and movement and how we use our body, is not always that easy. So what I'm going to ask you to do is pick one thing on the Wellculator, one thing that you know and are motivated to act on in the next, ideally sometime today. So in the next 24 hours, something that you can act on. Because the sooner you act on a goal, the more likely you are to actually do it. One thing that you're motivated to act on that you'd like to and are able to do in the next day. And then I'd like you to share it with the person behind or next to you and make it as easy as possible to make it a quick win. So for instance, Peter, don't go from drinking 1 glass of water to 8. Just add on 1. So I'm going to have 1 extra glass of water perhaps when I brush my teeth. Because if you link a new behavior to an anchor, something like brushing your teeth that you're already doing, you make it easier. Make it so easy that you can't say no, as quoted by Leo Babusky. So take a moment, or think of one thing, and then share it with the person behind or next to you, and then listen to theirs and feel free to steal their idea if you feel that's better than yours. Thank you. You guys are having a fantastic conversation. Would you like to share what your pledge is?
Sure. I'm going to replace a cup of coffee with
Where's the glass of water?
1 cup of coffee with 1 glass of water. So, no, that's a brilliant. BJ Fogg, who's a professor at Stanford, and I'll include him as a resource. That's the kind of habit that he says changes behavior. The tinier a habit is, the better. 1 coffee with 1 glass of water. One more example, and I feel like asking the two of you because we met and you came and Peter.
Well, exactly, a glass of water with each cup of coffee.
Okay.
I'm going to replace the coffee. I'm still going to have the coffee, but I'll have a glass of water.
Okay. Make it easy, and if you can add a fun element, you're more likely to really make it stick. So you'll hear from me in a thank you note. I generally post on Instagram some funky ideas around how you can keep this going, because it's not easy. I constantly have to remind myself too. And if I can stay in touch with you, even if it is only once a week on a Friday and you just delete the email, but you give a second thought to what we discussed today, I'd really like you to feel that you can own the title Chief Energy Officer and not compromise your health while building your wealth. Thank you. Thanks.